Okay, hi and welcome. So we're at the Divergent discussion, and I'm here with Lauren. I'm really excited. I met her in Florida at the ICANN conference, so I'm really excited to be here with you. So I'm Karla. I'm the clinical lead for Caboose. It's an inclusive and safe online community for neurodivergent people to connect, learn, and find purpose. We're built by neurodivergent people for neurodivergent people. And I'm also a PhD researcher and a psychotherapist, psychologist by trade, but registered as a psychotherapist. This is a reminder for anyone that's out there that the Divergent discussion is being recorded, and we'll be sending out a copy to everyone that has paid for a ticket. We'll also have time at the end for audience questions. So if there's anything that you want to know from Lauren or myself or both, then please just add it to the questions section. I'm going to find that now. I always kind of get lost with these. And then, yeah, so let me do a quick intro. With over 15 years of experience working with diverse learners, including students with autism, ADHD, developmental delays, and ESOL needs. Is that how you say it? ESOL? Is that how you say
Yeah,
it in the States?
it
Okay. All
is.
right. It's different in every country. Okay. And ESOL needs. Lauren brings deep expertise and lived experience to every corner of our school. She graduated magna cum laude from Ashford University with a bachelor's degree in English and a minor in political science, and later earned her master's in education with a focus on reading, literacy, and instruction. That's very interesting, eh? She's currently pursuing her PhD at University of Miami. That's nice and sunny. As a certified autism specialist, play based practitioner, and a proud neurodivergent parent, Lauren created the Sounds Academy to be a place where all children feel safe, included, and empowered to learn in ways that honor their individuality and neurotype. That's so lovely. Welcome,
Thank
Lauren. I'm
you.
so excited.
Thanks, Carla. I'm happy to be here. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I love that we're having these discussions with people from all over. And that we can also share knowledge across the oceans. I think it's so important for us all to learn from one another.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting to see the difference in available resources
Yeah, exactly.
across the nations. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that your signal is fine. I think it's okay. It ends up being a little bit better when we have recorded it, and then we can
Okay.
send it out. So maybe it's just the live that has a bit of
Okay.
a delay. Yes, yeah. So I'm just going to jump into the first question. And what would you say, what is an inclusive, oh no, maybe we need to change it, eh, Lauren? I think so, yeah. I think there's a bit of like a delay.
Let me
We're
see
just
what
going
I
to be
can do.
changing this quickly.
Okay. Are we back together?
Yes, we are. I think that's better. Yes. I can also
Better?
see you better now.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so what does an inclusive classroom mean to you in practice? I think that's such an important question because a lot of people say that they have an inclusive classroom, but what does it actually mean and how does it look like?
Right. Usually we get like the hot keywords like inclusive, and then it's like a bucket of fidgets. And that's not really like what inclusive is, right? It's a classroom where all the kids belong and everybody feels accepted with zero expectations. We have kids that communicate differently, whether they use an AAC device or they're verbal, and we all coexist in one classroom together. It's not just about access, it's about intentional design. So everything we do from lesson planning and curriculum building, we build it around the kids. That way, we're not forcing them to fit into a system, and we're accepting these different ways of communicating, different ways of learning. And then also, they have different ways of participating in these activities in the classroom by making it inclusive.
Can you maybe give an example there? Because I'm thinking back to when I was at school, and I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I have to kind of move every time. I'm sitting on an ergonomic chair as well to help me with that. But what are some practical things that you can say that are different in terms of those areas that you just mentioned for kids, like the participating and the communication and just the way that they're learning?
So, like you said with your chair, I'm sitting on a yoga ball as well. So, just having that flexible seating and having choice in how we are activating our learning for that day helps us self-regulate. So that's a big component that we practice here, and that's something that's easy to do in any environment. Offer desk sitting, standing to work. Some of our kids like to lay on their bellies and work on a desk on the floor, like a little clipboard, I should say. And all of those are fine and acceptable.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was speaking to I think she was head of learning from the UK the other day, and she was speaking to me about that some of the kids in the class just come in and they go straight to sports because they need to kind of get rid of their energy, and that's like kind of more your energetic ADHDers. And then, you get the ones that I was diagnosed with ADHD, but it's like the combined types. I'm very hyperactive, but only in my mind.
Right.
Um, so I don't need that intense activity in the morning, but I do need to kind of like touch something, doodle, and not just have a lot of instructions in the morning. Is that also something that you have at your school?
Yeah, actually, we spend our first 45 minutes of the school day doing heavy work or some kind of gross motor movement to try and we say that we are our brains and our hearts and our bodies are in a happy place, then we're ready to learn, right? So we kind of, when kids get onto campus, we're doing all those things. We're doing heavy work. They have choice. We're not getting straight into the instruction. It's more of a relaxed, we get to come in and co-regulate and get our heads in the right space and then move forward. Our older kids don't typically go outside and play. That's really our younger kids. Our older kids, they do team building exercises with their teachers or they play board games. Some of them are lone wolves and they do their own thing, which is also fine. And then we don't start our day until everybody's just we're ready, right? Because we can't force that. We can pretend it, but we can't force it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned the co-regulation too, because it's so important for our kids to also know that we need that regulation. Speaking of, like just the way that we interact with kids, what about behavioral management? Like the typical ways that we used to do behavioral management or behavior management is, if I think back about my initial training was an ABA, and I
Mhm.
branched away from that very quickly when I started working with neurodivergent individuals and asking them what they need, and then obviously with my own diagnosis. And I didn't like the idea of working for something the whole time. But what would you say, like, what is different than the typical kind of traditional behavior management?
So I can relate with that because I started with ABA before I got into education, and I left it with similar reasons to what you noted. And I think you kind of touched base on it, where it's like traditional systems are often about compliance. And in a traditional system, compliance equals success, right? But many neurodivergent students, um, they're not being defiant because behavior is a way of communication. So if it looks like defiance, it's actually they're communicating that they're in distress for some reason. So systems like clip charts or token economies are always just working for something, like you said in ABA. It kind of shames our neurodivergent kids instead of supporting that regulation piece. So modeling how to regulate, saying like our teachers knowing how to co-regulate and regulate themselves and modeling that goes a long way in our classroom and kind of sets the tone for our classroom management. And our students who are neurodivergent and they can comply in the classroom, typically they're masking, right? Which later in the classroom, yes, it looks like compliance and yes, I have straight A's, but when I get home, I'm having panic attacks or I'm having dysfunction or I'm losing skills when I get home because my brain had to work so hard to mask during those 7 hours I was in class. And sometimes it goes even as deep as having like suicidal tendencies from masking all day in school, right? So overall, those traditional classroom behavior management skills, they focus on control, whereas we're focusing on connection and autonomy and co regulation.
That's so nice. Well said too. It's like I don't want to be controlled. I also have PDA, and I think that's how we met, right? Like the
Right.
persistent drive for autonomy. And if somebody tells me what to do, I will do the opposite. And I think so many of our kids have been told what to do
Mhm.
for so many years, that they get to a stage where they're just like, I'm gonna do the opposite.
Yeah, and then sometimes with our kids that have PDA profiles, it's, being told to do something puts us instantly in fight or flight, right? So I'm either fighting you or I'm running from you when you give me a demand.
Yeah, exactly. I used to fight. Um, Can you maybe give me an example of like a story where inclusive practices transformed a student's experience?
We had a student that started with us, and the parents came with a list of things that the teacher and principal from their old school said, right? Aggressive, um, explosive threat, hits others. And then once we were able to get him into our school and we dropped those like punitive systems and we offered autonomy and choice, he had autonomy over when he got breaks and when he did schoolwork, along with visual schedules. He began to thrive. Instead of coming to school and being aggressive and compliant, we have a kid who's now with his third year here, and he is just a whole other kid, right? He lights up. He's curious. He asks questions. He's got friends. The first year he was here, I remember mom crying because she wanted to throw a birthday party, but nobody comes to the birthday parties, and now it's like him and his family, they have a whole different life now because we were able to practice these inclusive environments here.
It makes such a difference. And that story is quite a familiar one where the kids are struggling to have friends. And, they really do want to have friends. Yeah. There's a little bit of an echo. I don't know why I'm hearing an echo. Can you hear that?
I do not hear that.
Okay, I wonder if it's just when I talk, which is strange. I'll just mute myself in between. But okay, so what about the misconceptions that you hear about some of the inclusion or the inclusive environments? Are there any misconceptions that you want to talk about?
Um, I think the biggest misconception that we get is that we're a special needs school and not an inclusive school, which is very different. Uh, and there's also the stigma that being in an inclusive environment may hold back kids that are neurotypical. But in reality, the inclusive strategies benefit all learners. I mean, we're talking about flexibility, empathy, autonomy, creative teaching strategies that we don't really get to see in general education classrooms anymore. And they don't just support the neurodivergent learner, they support all the kids. And it also raises the bar for our neurotypical kids because with so much choice and autonomy, our students really have to own those choices and they have to own their time management and they have to own their education, right? Breaking out of that traditional general education environment gives kids like a chance to really critically think about how they're executing their time and how they're executing their research and who they're getting their answers from when they're in school. It gives them the chance to have power in their education, which I think is a big deal for neurotypical learners.
Yeah, and also just like to become amazing adults because
Yeah,
like the more you learn as a kid.
absolutely. And with that being said, it teaches kids how to include others who usually aren't included, right? Like how to assume competence in somebody who maybe has like a visual disability. And often society doesn't assume competence in those situations, right? Um, and in the real world, that looks like our little humans here at the Sands Academy will be adults who are compassionate and empathetic and accepting.
That's so nice. I was also having a conversation with somebody else from school that spoke about character education and just like how to teach that to kids. And this is such a nice way of doing it, just to kind of like show them to be more inclusive, to see that people learn differently, people communicate differently, people engage differently. That's, yeah, that's awesome. I think you're
Yeah.
helping the next generation to become more inclusive.
Thank you. That's the goal. We're trying.
What about sensory overwhelm? So in a classroom setting, if there are some kids that have some sensory overwhelm, sorry, how do you manage that, or how do you support them in a classroom environment?
Proactively instead of reacting, right? We have a really small classroom size, so we have 2 teachers to 8 students in a class. And with that small classroom size, we're really able to learn our kids. So part of it is our teachers being amazing at their job and learning what their students' sensory profiles are and what their preferences are. And then we can take those sensory profiles and embed it into our curriculum and our lesson plans. We also always have, I call them global accommodations here because they're not accommodations just for our neurodivergent kids. It's just something we do in our classroom, right? So that means having uh, visual schedules, predictable times of transition. We always have noise canceling headphones available, movement options, autonomy, and then I think most importantly is that we ask our students permission instead of our students asking us for permission, right? Like they know that, hey, I can go get these things or step out here and sit and work without raising my hand and asking my teacher. Like I'm trusted to go do this and do what I'm supposed to do. There's a lot of forward teaching involved. Like we have to teach our kids the do's and the don'ts, and so we can have this harmony in the classroom. But it's really just being about being proactive.
And that, yeah, I love that you're giving them the autonomy to choose and to say, well, I'm in charge of like regulating myself, because that's ultimately the goal. What about the teacher's ability to be quite self-aware, and also the education that they should get around neurodiversity? Do you have any thoughts on that, or ideas that other people can take from?
Um, well, I think our teacher's role and ability to be self-aware. Um, I think it's everything. I think it's the catalyst for our classroom management, right? And you can't support what you don't understand. So when teachers explore their own sensory needs and kind of unpack that unconscious bias, they create a space for all learner types and all neurotypes. Inclusion starts with reflection as well. So our teachers need to be short of masterminds when it comes to regulation, because if our teachers cannot understand and regulate their own emotions, they cannot co-regulate with their students or even model appropriate expectations, right? So pairing an open mind with education and self-awareness is where the magic happens. And that mental shift of education revolving around navigating a classroom, especially if your kids have PDA or anxiety, you know, knowing how to navigate those feelings makes a huge difference. And I've seen teachers strip the outer layer of like, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, and then shed some of those ABA practices that maybe they learned on traditional campuses. And then when they finally shed that outer piece, that's when our teachers are able to lead with connection, and lead with play and autonomy, and then while still teaching rigorous academic skills. I hope that
Yeah,
answered your question. That was a lot.
no, I think that's great, because I think for me, if I just had a teacher in high school, especially, that was leading through connection, like authentic connection, I think it would have made such a difference to my passion and love, possibly, for going to school. I just felt like I was told what to do all the time, and I had to fit in this box. And nobody really saw that, oh, okay, well, she's actually kind of cool the way she is. I saw that like late in my 30s. But I think it's great that schools are changing and that they're more open to different ways of being. Yeah, and just like connecting with a person is so important. It makes all the difference, say, for a child that feels like they're different already. If they just have somebody that says, you know what, I see you, I understand you. Maybe I don't understand you fully, but I want to get to know you more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's like a saying that says the kids don't don't show you what they know until they know you care, right?
Cute. Yeah.
It's just we kind of lead with that with our lesson planning because it makes a big difference here.
Mhm. And how do you handle conflict or pushbacks from or resistance to inclusive practices that you have? I know that not all schools are like that, or not all of the systems are like that. So, how do you handle any of the pushback from
Uh,
those?
I like to lead them with their curiosity and not confrontation, right? Sometimes I ask people like, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid that will happen if you try these things in your classroom? What we're doing in typical PDA fashion, it's against the status quo, right? It's not what everybody else is doing, and it's uncomfortable. I know that what we're doing is wildly different from general education practices, but I think our data with our high retention rates, with our student success rates, I think that the data also shows that we're onto something, right? We're doing something, and there is no reason why we can't do this in all classrooms. There's simple changes. It's really just thinking ahead and being proactive.
Mm. Yeah, I do a lot of talks on accommodations and in the workplace, and it's such small changes that we need to do in the workplace, and it helps everybody. That's the thing, probably. Mm.
There's like this misconception that inclusion is just for people who have neurodivergence, or people who have disabilities, but the things that we change to create inclusion, like you said, it benefits everybody, not just those who really depend on it for a living.
Yeah. What would you tell parents who are looking at schools for their neurodivergent children? What are some of the things to look for to ensure it's neuro inclusive, not just the box of fidgets? That was funny that you said that.
Um, I guess to look past the trending words, right? Like neurodiversity is like a trend now. Inclusion is a trend now when you're in the education realm. And looking past those trending hashtags or whatever and asking specific questions like how do you respond to sensory needs? What does discipline look like on campus? Is the curriculum flexible? Does it meet all different learning profiles? Um, and then personal testimonies, ask the parents, how are your kids there? How do they feel? How are they doing? How do your teachers respond if parents have suggestions or say, hey, my kid's not getting it? Right? And just listen to those conversations in the community, because that's gonna navigate who's truly being inclusive and who's being compliant or expecting compliance with the guise of being inclusive.
And what about also walking around and like looking at the classrooms? Are there specific things that they can look out for? I know that one of the teachers said, she said when she walks around and she looks at the older children in the classes, she gets so happy because she can see that they're so happy and that they're enjoying what they're doing and learning. So maybe something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Doing a tour, looking at student engagement, and then also just the tools that are available in the environment, right? When you walk in here, you can clearly see that we have flexible seating, that we have spaces for sensory breaks, and that we also have things on our walls like the zones of regulation to help us pinpoint emotions, visual schedules on our walls for everybody. So it's just the environment also is a good telltale.
And then the amount of kids per class, is that important for you?
Oh, absolutely. Um, Our classes are small. There's 8 kids in a class, but with all the different personalities in our class, it feels like we have a class of 25, right? So being able to meet everybody's needs and then uh in a general education classroom, you're asked to use student data to drive your instruction, but you're given an impossible timeline of standards to check off and then throw in a testing window. So not only do we have to have all these checked off, we also have to get it done by this time because these months are set aside for testing, right? So we can't truly, in a gen ed classroom with so many kids, take student data, reflect on it, and then act upon it and let their data really drive our instruction. But having 8 kids in our classroom, we're allowed to do that. There's space in our day to really get to know them, their sensory profiles, their learning profiles, kinesthetic learner, auditory learner. Um, and we're able to have the time with the 8 kids and really let their data and their learning profile and their sensory profile drive their instruction, mixed with like special interest and the things they like, because that's important too.
Yeah, I really like that. And when I was a teacher, I was only a teacher, I think, for a couple of years because it's such a hard job. So I decided I'm rather going to continue with psychology and become a therapist because it's a little bit easier. But when I was a teacher, I only had, I think it was 6 or 8. No, it was fewer. I think it was 6 kids in my class, and I had an assistant teacher too. And sometimes it felt like it was a lot, but it really worked out well, the smaller classrooms. So I always say to parents that if they can find a school with smaller classrooms, it usually is better, especially for us sensory sensitive ones. What about other advice or suggestions that you would, or more advice and suggestions that you would tell parents who are looking at schools for their neurodivergent children? What are some of the things to look out for, like we said earlier, but what advice can you give them for advocating for inclusion in mainstream schools? Like, how can you get them to get the mainstream school to be more inclusive, or is that even something that parents can do?
I do think that. Um, it, you know, sometimes we talk about all the faults in like the general education classroom, but then we don't highlight that the general education classroom is ran by the teacher, right? And teachers are, they're magical. If your heart is in teaching, it is pure magic. And having that conversation with the classroom teacher and going with the mindset of that we're a partner, right? We're a team. This is a partnership. Can go a long way. And that also extends to like your IEP team. Uh, and don't be afraid to speak truth to power. I know some of these things to some people can sound silly, like, oh, what do you mean? Like let her lay on her belly and write. Like that's crazy. We don't need to do that, right? But having these conversations and not being afraid to speak up for your kid and remember that you are a team and your teacher probably wants the same thing that you want, uh, go for it. I also advise that you document everything. And if a parent is going to come with a list of problems, bring solutions, right? We can all nitpick and say this isn't working, but tell us what does work and have that conversation with the teacher and ask, how can we make this happen for my kid and not have it throw the 24 other kids' day off, right? How can we make this harmonious in the classroom? And just remember that you're not alone because it can feel like you're really alone when parents are advocating for your kids, but you have to find your village and you have to build your resources. And if you have to, bring in the allies and bring in the advocates and just fight for your kids' needs. But going in with the mindset that it's not a fight and we're a partnership can really set the tone for the kid's entire school career.
Mhm. Yeah, and I also think that parents are the true experts of their kids. I mean, obviously the kids are the experts, but if they're still young, then the parents are the experts. They know what the kids like. They know what motivate them. So sharing that with the teacher, and the teachers want to know. I mean, I wanted to know everything about the kids so that I can help them.
Absolutely. Um, general education doesn't have to be one size fits all if you have the right teacher in the classroom.
Yeah, it makes all the difference though, eh? Having the
It
right
really
teacher.
it really does. It really does make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that would be my biggest piece of advice for parents is go and meet the teacher and go with your gut. If you find like this teacher is going to go above and beyond, then they probably will, and they'll probably bring in things that your child needs, but it's a feeling. It's weird to say that, but it is a feeling that you get from somebody, and I think our kids are really good at it, so our parents would be too, because, neurodivergence comes from somewhere. So
Yeah, it's one of those like you said, like you got to read the energy and trust your gut. And
so
and teachers are also teachable
uh,
because they may not have ever had a kid like mine or you know yours walk in their classroom before. So
yeah, I think sharing is the most important thing. So sharing knowledge, because that really is quite powerful for us. Speaking about powerful, what is one small but powerful change teachers can make tomorrow to better support neurodivergent students?
giving choice, autonomy, it feels like a big change because you're losing control essentially, right, of your classroom at first, giving that autonomy and choice. Um, but I think that having the autonomy and having kids own their environment and own their education, I think it's a powerful thing. And it lets the kids know, like, hey, you're trusted and you belong here and I want you here.
I think it's so important. I think the first thing for me is always, like you said, the connection, and then just like really being authentic with the child. When you're tired, tell them you're tired. They know probably.
They do. Um, and I say that to my teachers, model your feelings. Tell them, hey, I'm really tired tonight because and just be honest and be relatable. Because when the kid comes in your classroom and they're, like you said, connection, yeah, connection is definitely the first piece. Um, I just always assume that teachers already have that because I live in like a bubble here on the Sands Academy where my teachers and my students are just so closely networked together. But yeah, absolutely connection.
Connection and then that autonomy. I had a kid that I worked with, and I've told their parents this, so they. I'm not revealing something now, but he was still very young, and he used to want to push this, the green or the button for the little man to go green so that he can cross the road. And he would always kind of push my buttons, ironically, because he would go like backwards, like walk backwards and see if he can see if I'm gonna go run after him, right? So in the beginning I would, because I'm like, no, 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 don't go to the road, don't go to the road. And then I was like, wait a minute, he's just testing me here. So we had a really strong connection. And I told them, look, I'm gonna have coffee. We can go and push the button, but you have to wait for 10 seconds. And he was, like, walking backwards, like, checking me, like, seeing if I'm gonna turn around and just, like, run after him, and, everything in me was saying run after him, but I was like, "No, I have to give him a little bit of autonomy." It's weird, it's like you said, so freedom through boundaries, and I think I always, like, remind myself of that. It's me for as a person too. If you tell me, "Don't smoke, don't drink, don't do this," I'll be like, I'm gonna try it." But if you tell me you can drink and smoke, but these are the things that could happen. Like, this is bad for you, obviously, and this is why it's bad, and show me the science. Then I'll be like, all right, yeah, that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do that. But I'll have a glass of wine. I'm not going to lie now. but, but yeah, I think freedom through boundaries. And we're not telling anyone here, let me just do a disclaimer. We're not telling anyone here to give wine to the kids at school. Don't do that. Not that much freedom. Okay. I wanted to ask you about ideally, if you can give your top five things. I know this is a lot, but if you can give five things for teachers to include in their classrooms or a way that they can engage with students and or parents, something practical that they can do.
um, I think some of the things that we've talked about already, like having those visual supports. Okay, five, right? Yes, five. Visual supports, like for routines, transitions, even expectations, uh, flexible seating to help with that autonomy and that choice, right? Let them move. Stimming is okay as long as we're not hurting others or ourselves or being wildly disruptive. Uh, Connection, right? Connection so we can co-regulate. Uh, Co-regulation over control and over compliance. That relationship with the parents, right? Collaborative problem solving with the families, talking about the things that you're seeing in the classroom and asking parents, hey, what works at home? How can we translate this into the class? Like you said, the teachers and parents can be our best teachers, right? And then lastly, just that affirming language and thought process of like assuming competency, always assume competency and not to label our neurodivergent kids, but really just describe their behaviors and not label them saying, oh, well, they're acting, they can't pay attention because they have ADHD and just leave it at that, right? Dig deeper, connect with that kid and figure out what's going on and then meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I actually
Was
wanted to
that
talk to
five?
you about, yeah, that's those are really good ones. I want to talk about the labeling and also that connection with the parents, because I think those, I mean, all of them are really important, but those two we didn't really touch on and during our conversation. The labeling, I agree that we shouldn't be saying it's because of that, because it gives a negative connotation to ADHD or autism or whatever it is. And for me, my ADHD and PDA actually is, it can actually be quite positive in a way. I'm not saying it's a superpower because I don't like that route either, because it does bother me sometimes. But it also gives me the ability to hyperfixate on my work, on my PhD, on my friends. It doesn't give me the ability to hyperfixate on admin. I absolutely hate admin or washing dishes or cooking. I'm just not good at those things. So it's not that I can't pay attention. And that's, that's what you brought up. It's such a misconception. It's like ADHD doesn't like I've got extremely good attention to the things that I like. Um, yeah, and I think that's something that we should be mentioning to kids, like if they know about their ADHD, saying like, these people have ADHD and using some famous people maybe and saying like, look how they can pay attention. I know it's in the name attention deficit, but it's not really what it is. It's just paying attention to everything that typical brains pay attention to.
Right, right. Like I like to explain it with my brain. Um, I got my autism diagnosis like 5 years ago when I was going through getting my kids diagnosed because,
Good.
shocker, it's genetic, right? Um, so I forgot where I was going with that, but
Your
what I'm
brain.
thinking, what I'm thinking of, oh, okay. So like my brain can't filter out the things a neurotypical brain can, right? Like I hear the background noise. I can't distinguish between my conversation with you and the person's conversation in the corner of the restaurant. I hear them both at the same level,
Mhm.
right? So I get overstimulated and then anyway, I think the big thing about the labels is sometimes it can lead to kids hearing that and then they blame their behaviors or not being able to do something yet on
Mm,
ADHD or being autistic, right? Like I can't control my anger because I have ADHD. It's like, well, no,
mm,
we can learn the tools. It may be harder for you. Yes, that is a valid feeling, but you absolutely can and get you the tools that you need and figure out how this works for your brain and what makes you feel the best inside, right? Um, so yeah, labels they can be a problem.
mm. I've heard this where one of my kids say all the time, one of the kids that we work with, sorry, he always says like, "Oh, it's just because of my anxiety. I can't be doing this because of my anxiety," because he's heard this now before, and it's cute, but he's totally using it. And if you're using the word anxiety, a lot of people are like, "Oh, okay, well, we can't touch that." So, what would you say? Like, what is a conversation that we can have with him or his parents to help with that?
You have to learn how to live with your anxiety, right? It's like you have a person part and that's part of the conversation and you don't want them to be part of the conversation, but you have to have them there. You have to learn how to exist with it and how to live with it. And that may look like what helps my anxiety is scheduling. Like my mom, I love my mom. She comes over, but she just comes over when she wants to. And sometimes that's a problem for me, right? And that's a problem for my kids too. And it took us a while to kind of learn and navigate that. And it took a lot for me to say, hey, like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. And of course it did hurt her feelings, but she she learned from it. And now she comes. It's funny because yesterday she changed plans on us. We were supposed to go to her house and pick her up before going to the beach. And I sent her a text. I said, we haven't made it out the door yet, but we're working on our way out the door. And then she texted me 10 minutes later. She said, I'm on my way. I'll be right there. And I'm like, okay, don't come in the house. Like, called her. I'm like, I know you're trying to be helpful. I know you're trying to do something nice. I said, but you're going to throw everybody else off in this house if you walk through the door. So just, she goes, well, what do you want me to do? Sit in the car? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm sorry to have to ask you that, but please sit in the car and when we get outside, we'll get outside. And, right. And now I'm anxious because I'm thinking about the meltdowns I'm going to have to regulate with my kids. And then I have to co-regulate myself because this is not the plan. This was not what the plan was this morning or yesterday or the 3 days before that when I asked, right? And then so just all these big feelings involved in it. And then it's funny because I walked outside and she parked across the street in the neighbor's yard. And I'm like, what
Mm,
are you doing? And she's like, well, I didn't know what to do and I didn't want to make it harder for you. So I just thought maybe no one would notice if I was over here. I'm like, well, except for my neighbor, get out of his yard. Please come park over here. Right. So um
sorry. This is
so
funny.
it's not pretty
Mm.
navigating anxiety and it's not, but it's something you have to do. Using it as an excuse, just I don't think it's the right thing to do. And it's hard to accept that. And it's also hard for parents, I think, to let go of that control and be like, well, like I'm sure my mom was thinking, like, seriously, what's the big deal? Like, you're not ready, I'm ready, I'm coming over. Let's go.
Yeah,
Right?
I think so up to a point. I think again, like this, the neurodivergence come from somewhere, right? So it is genetic, and usually we can trace it back. Like once we start seeing it in us, we see it in our kids, then we see it in us, and then we start seeing it in our parents. We're like, oh,
Uh,
but they've just suppressed it for so many years. And that comes out very different. I mean, I can tell you stories about my mom too, and I can see when she's leading with anxiety, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, but, it could have been so different if you had that knowledge." So I think it's great to share knowledge about what is anxiety. Okay, so with this kid and specifically this kid, like we can teach him about his nervous system, which we do, and then show him, okay, with not all of this is anxiety. It could be excitement. It comes across very similarly.
right.
And then show him how to regulate it by using his vagus nerve or, his parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system, and then showing him what activities he can do, and we can test it out. So we give him all of those powerful tools and he can self-regulate.
You said and he can or he can't self-regulate.
And then hopefully he can
Oh
self-regulate.
yeah.
He's getting there, yeah. But
That's the goal. Yeah.
yeah.
And I like to remind parents that like progress isn't always linear when we're dealing with these types of things, right? It it has its ups and its downs, and it can be 5 steps forward and then 10 steps back, right? But the goal is to always keep trying.
Mm. I wanted to touch on that connection with parents too. So if because I mean I remember when I was a teacher and speaking to a lot of teachers these days, I noticed that there is a bit of a disconnect with the parents. It's like they're in these silos, that's the word, silos. It's like the parents and then the teachers and then the kids, and then they're sometimes with the teachers and then the kids are sometimes with the parents, but it feels a lot of it's kind of like disjointed sometimes. How do you make sure or ensure that the parents and the teachers are on the same page with the with the IEPs and the way to work with the kid or manage or speak or engage or anything like that?
Um, I think it starts with the expectations that we set for our teachers. So our teachers have an expectation here where they have to contact each family 2 times a week.
Sure, okay, that's a lot.
Um,
Yeah.
and they are held accountable. We have these communication logs that I'm sure they hate filling out, right, for accountability. Uh, but really, just having that conversation, having being a catalyst for initiating that conversation, and asking questions based off of observations, not based off of labels, like we talked about. Um, the model that we have here is considered a hybrid model because our classroom is smaller, but our time spent on campus is also shorter. So that means our parents that enroll their students here, they want to be and they have to be involved in the education piece. Otherwise, the hybrid model does not work. Because unlike a traditional school where the kids are here Monday through Friday for up to 8 hours, the kids are only here like you would be at university, Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and they can either be here for a half day or a full day.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I want to go to your school.
So it's like, it really helps our PDA kids because they come in here, they get done what they have to do, and they're like, I'm done. Bam.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Don't tell me anything else.
Yeah.
And right? So,
I won't be
um,
there for like 10 minutes. I'll be like, ah, I'm finished.
but the cool thing about it, the flexibility of our model is some of our kids will actually do all the work at home. And then they come in and they work with their teacher for up to 15 minutes, get feedback, and then they go straight to work, remediating or fixing, adding whatever they needed to fix after having a conference with their teacher. And now, of course, that's for our older kids, right? Um, so there's having
Awesome.
that flexibility, and autonomy does not just happen here on campus, it happens throughout their entire experience here.
That's really great. There's a school here. I think they have a few of those. I can't remember the name now, but it's a South African guy that owns the school here in Portugal, and it's also very similar to that model, where the kid can come in, and if they want to go surfing in the morning, they can. They could just come in a little bit later. It's like because we live
That's so
here in
cool.
this little surf town. Yeah,
That's neat.
it's so cool. When he was talking to me, there were these like those old school pinball machines. It was in the back, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Is it like a backdrop?" He goes, "No, no, these are real. Like they can play with them if they want to." Oh, like Pac-Man, and yeah, it's amazing. Such
It
a
is
cool.
amazing. And then on the outside, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, how are they learning? What are they doing there? They're just playing all day, right? But
No. It should be like play. Like this is when I learn best as well, as if I feel like I'm not doing anything. Like this type of conversation, for example, for me doesn't feel like work, but it's labeled as work. The other thing also that we have to our advantage these days is that we can create our own jobs. We're in a very fortunate situation or era where if you want to, I don't know, create new age Pac-Man mini games, and that's your hyperfixation as an ADHD or whatever your label is, then you can create that. You can become a game developer, and that could be your specialty, and you can make TikTok videos on it, and you can enjoy your life like that from a distance. You don't have to socialize if you don't want to. It's amazing.
it is. It's really amazing. We live in a time now where you can just create your own opportunity,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And if you have that uh, ability to hyper fixate on something, it can work in your benefit. You're absolutely right. I mean, can you guess what my special interest is? I mean, it's obviously like education and neurodiversity, right? Because if it wasn't, I think, well, I don't know, I don't want to jinx myself because when you get those hyperfixations and then your brain is just like, I'm done. I don't want to like touch that anymore. So I got to be careful calling it my hyperfixation, um, because I can't be done. I'm already 5 years in. We're not going anywhere, right?
A
Um,
passion.
but it started because I couldn't turn my brain off.
Mhm.
I had to work towards it.
Yeah, I own two early intervention centers in Cape Town when I still lived there, and the reason why I went in it, if I'm completely honest, is because I love toys. So I love, like, you're playing with something there. And I used to go into like toy shops and just spend our entire budget on like the newest, coolest toys. And the principal, she used to tell me, she's like, Carla, you need to relax. Like, these kids have enough toys. But that's the reason why I opened the schools. I was like, I love sensory equipment. I love toys. I'm gonna create a school because then I can just buy toys the whole time. Just bring it. So all the time the kids came to see me, they're like, Carla's here, and I would open the boot and there's just be toys coming out. It's amazing.
You were the toy lady.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was the
That's
toy
wonderful.
lady, not the toilet, the toy lady. That's
Oh,
exactly it. They
that's
loved
too
it.
bad. Actually, this happened because I was a public school teacher for a long time. And then when my oldest child was entering kindergarten, we had an IEP meeting. And I left that IEP meeting with zero accommodations for her. Um, I don't want to tell too much of my daughter's story because it's her story to tell, right? If she chooses to tell it. But that really hurt. And I was like, I was like a monster in that meeting. I was pointing my finger and I was like, you write and document because they have to write the meeting notes, everything that we say verbatim. And I'm like, and you document that. This is my 2 weeks. And I'm not coming back to my teaching station. And, you need to find somebody to replace me. If she can't come here, I can't go here. And we got a lawyer involved. And the lawyer basically said, well, you have to throw her to the wolves. And you have to hope that something happens and she gets expelled, and then you can challenge the IEP and appeal their decision. Or after the first quarter, if she's failed everything, then you can also appeal the decision. And I'm like, and why would I do that to my kid?
Mm-mm.
Right? Knowing that she needs these accommodations, being autistic and ADHD and having none. And on top of that, not being verbal, we just she needed those. And
Yeah.
then and that's when I hyper fixated on it.
Mm.
And that's when this was born. This actually started on top of my washer and dryer in my garage with my laptop. So,
Oh, beautiful story. I mean, not the first
yeah,
part, but the second part of you just
the
taking
second
over.
part, right? Something
Mm.
beautiful came out of it. But um, I do think having that ability to hyper focus on something gave me the edge and the drive that I needed to get it done, mixed with the
Yeah.
support from my family. But
Yeah, and the passion, obviously, like the motivation that you had for specifically for your daughter. I'm
right.
so happy that you went this route. I don't think there's any other way for you, for somebody like you to go all the way to say, okay, well, I'm just going to create the best school then, and then she can go wherever she wants to and do whatever she wants and still learn the way she needs to learn.
Yeah, and it's crazy because then uh, I'm in the community talking about it, and it was just people flocked to our school model
Oh, that's
because it
awesome.
was
Yeah,
it was
need
such
it.
a need. Yeah.
Mm. That's the thing is like we need to create more of these places because it's what our kids need, but not just our kids, it's all kids. I mean, if I look at even the kids that were in my class, and if I think back, especially high school, I don't know why high school was such a traumatic experience for me, but especially with the high school, it's like there were so many kids that fell through the cracks. And even my friends now, like I look at them now and I mean, I love my friends, so I just hope that they know this. But, a lot of them went down the unhealthy route because they weren't seen, they weren't understood. And I think if they went to a school like yours and inclusive mainstream schools or inclusive schools in general, I think it would have made such a difference. So from my heart to yours, I just wanted to say thank you for creating something like that. I think in terms of questions, we've covered all of those. I have one last one. What is one of the best things that you look forward to when you go into an inclusive school, the school that you've created? So Sounds Academy.
What do I look forward to?
Yeah. What is like one of your best things that you can't wait to see?
Honestly, just the people, the energy on campus. I have a great team of teachers. and they bring the campus to life, and they get the kids excited to be here and to learn and create community, and it's just you can just feel it. It's like buzzing with electricity, and I look forward to that every day.
They
Oh
probably
yeah.
know that everybody is there for the right reasons. I think like our kids, especially neurodivergent kids, well, neurodivergent kids in general, they can just feel it. They feel if you're there for them, or if you're trying to tell them what to do, then they're like, oof. I'll share one more story before we end. But there was this kid that came to the center that I worked at, and I remember telling a therapist, another therapist, because I was going to be his lead in my language, in Afrikaans, because we didn't think that he would speak Afrikaans. Um, that I said in Afrikaans, in my language, I said, don't make silly jokes with him. He's extremely smart. And he wasn't making eye contact. And as I said that in Afrikaans, he looked up and he smiled at me. And then later on, it was revealed that he speaks 7 languages. I didn't know anything about him. It's like speaks 7 languages. Yeah, he had all these like amazing gifts. And yeah, I think it was just like he needed somebody to see him for who he is before somebody told them that he's smart and these things. I think, yeah, presume competence. Yeah, always. Yeah,
And to think if you didn't have that energy or that mentality about you, then he could have been in that room the whole time and nobody would have
exactly.
known that kid could speak 7 languages, and that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, such a cool kid. I miss him now. Um, Thank you so much for your time, Lauren. This has been great. This
Oh,
hour has
thank you,
flown
Karla.
by, actually.
Oh,
This is just, it's just a quick reminder to our audience that we have a range of these divergent discussions coming up in August. We're going to be talking to the founder of Trevengers, Agnes Abelson, about traveling as a neurodivergent individual. And I've just actually made a video on that, what I do when I travel. So that's going to come out soon. It's kind of a strange video because I'm green screening myself. So there's a video of me doing everything and then I'm guiding myself through it. So I was like tripping out. I'm like, oh, it's a twin.
I'm sure it's great. Your videos are always engaging.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I always laugh at myself. And then we also have Jill joining us discussing stress management, which I think is a really important topic. You can get those tickets through Humanitix and or you can head to our website or check out the app. And we can always create a tribe in Caboose for parents to speak about topics like this that we spoke about today, Lauren. That would be a great thing I think we can do. And then
Yeah,
there's
that'd
a
be great.
yeah, I think we should do that actually. And if you have a paid ticket, that will send this recording to you. So thank you so much. And yeah, it was lovely.
Thank you, Karla. Thanks for having me.